Ruler of Beasts, Chapter 5. Ozma's chambers were beautifully appointed, and the lion cast an admiring glance at the soft, thick carpets and gorgeous antique furniture. The palace didn't look half so nice when Scare was king, he remarked, and a troubled look passed across Ozma's face. Do you think? She asked politely, but something was clearly bothering her. Glinda had been vague about why the Scarecrow had left the Emerald City and retired to his mansion, and the Scarecrow had never mentioned the reason himself. Or at least he'd never actually gotten to that part in Scare's letters. He regretted not finishing them. Did something happen between you and Scare? The lion asked. Ozma flushed. We both thought he would be happier away from the palace, she said quickly, but it was clear she wasn't telling him the whole truth. She shot the lion an uncertain look, and then sighed. To be honest, I'm not sure the Scarecrow was had the best interests of Oz at heart. I know he's your friend, and I don't mean to speak ill of him, but he and Glinda, well, they spent a lot of time together whispering in corners, if you know what I mean. Glinda has her own ideas about how to run Oz, as I'm sure you know. His first thought was to defend Scare. Scare may have had his head too deeply in his books, and he might have missed the throne, but he was a threat to no one, and especially not to Oz. He was surprised by the bitter note in her voice, and for a moment he nearly told her that Glinda herself had sent him. But then he remembered the menace in Glinda's parting words and thought better of it. There was some mystery here to be unraveled, and he was beginning to realize that Glinda hadn't been entirely honest with him about her motives, or about why she left the palace. I haven't spoken to Glinda since the coronation, he said carefully. Did you quarrel? Ozma looked at her hands. I thought it best if both of them leave the Emerald City for a while. It took some persuading, but they finally agreed. A note of determination entered her voice, and for the first time since he'd seen her, he realized what a formidable opponent she must be underneath the sweet, girlish surface. If Glinda had her own ideas about how to govern Oz, she must have been pleasantly surprised to realize how stubborn its new queen was. I see, the lion replied. Ozma looked as though she was about to say something else, but at that moment the door opened, and a procession of servants bearing trays of food entered the room. The lion sniffed greedily, immediately distracted from his interrogation of Ozma. The Emerald Palace didn't skimp when it came to meals. The servants' trays were piled high with sweet pastries and pies, tureens of soup and baskets of steaming freshly baked bread, a roasted piglet with an apple in its mouth, and all kinds of hors d'oeuvres. A steward poured champagne into an emerald goblet for Ozma, and a green bowl for the lion, who didn't waste any time before diving into the feast. Ozma, who picked daintily at her food, could only laugh at the lion's dubious table manners. At last, when he was full, he ordered another bowl of champagne and settled back on the pile of green cushions. He and Ozma had been discussing something important before dinner arrived, and he cast about for a way to pick up the thread again. As if reading his mind, Ozma sighed and looked into her glass. She seemed distant and sad, as if the true Ozma was slowly being revealed to him. It's good to have a friend nearby again, she said quietly. The palace staff is wonderful, of course, but I haven't really been able to talk to anyone in ages. Ruling is a lonely business, the lion agreed, and she brightened. Isn't it? I knew you'd understand. I'm honored to be the Queen of Oz, and it's my birthright after all, but so few people understand what it's like to have this power. I'm responsible for the well-being of everyone in Oz, and I'm worried about failing my subjects or making some terrible mistake that will send the country into ruin. The lion was never worried all that much about the welfare of his subjects, but he made a sympathetic noise. He had no idea Ozma took rolling too seriously. Little world of the Emerald City reached the Forest of the Beasts. No wonder she was sad, if she fretted this much. He patted her on the arm with a reassuring paw. Perhaps in that way we are the same. We have to figure it out as we go along, she said with a smile. He felt some comfort that she didn't know everything instinctively. He certainly had spent the past few months wondering how to be king, but his concern had been for himself and not others. Ozma had heaped the welfare of the whole kingdom atop her delicate shoulders. "I think we're supposed to serve, not just rule," she continued. Lion shook his head. "The other beasts used to delight in scaring me, and I don't forgive and forget. I usually just eat those who cross me." She laughed. "In that we differ. I forget, but I never forget." "What you need is to lighten up a little," he suggested. "Take a vacation. Or if you can't get away from the palace, at least take some time off to have some fun." Ozma smiled wearily. "Oh, Lion, maybe it's that easy in the kingdom of the beasts, but for me it's not so simple. The whole country of Oz depends on me. I can't just take a vacation from being queen." "Can't you at least go away in Glinda's summer palace for a while?" he prompted. He was determined to get to the bottom of whatever had come between the witch and the fairy, but Ozma only shook her head. "That time is past now," she said quietly, and he saw that he wouldn't get anything else out of her in the subject of Glinda. Ozma pushed her plate away, and a servant immediately appeared to clear the remains of her meal. The voluntary vanished from her expression, and she smiled brightly at the lion. "How long will you be staying with us, dear lion?" The lion's mind raced as he tried to decide how to answer her question. Glinda hadn't said how long it would take to find this mysterious necklace, and the palace was huge. Ozma laughed again in his concentration. "Of course, you can stay as long as you'd like," she exclaimed. "As long as you really can leave the forest to itself. I'll be glad of the company. You mustn't think I'm trying to get rid of you." "That's very generous, Your Highness," the lion said. "But only if you promise to call me Ozma," she added in a mock serious tone. "We're friends after all, and we're practically equals. Now, I'm sure you must be tired from your journey. I'll see you in the morning." The lion knew a dismissal when he heard one, but at least Ozma hadn't realized his motives for visiting her weren't entirely selfless. He bowed deeply, stifling a burp, and returning to his chambers, leaving Ozma alone in her enormous room like a lost, lonely doll.